Welcome back to the Essential GovCon Brief, presented by Gordon Reese's Government Contracts Practice Group. I'm Patrick Burns.
I'm Jeremy Camacho.
Before we jump into this month's updates, we want to take a moment to recognize a milestone for this podcast. This marks our 24th episode in 2 years of the Essential GovCon Brief. We want to thank everyone who has listened, subscribed, shared this podcast over the past 2 years. We really appreciate your support and look forward to continuing to bring you the latest developments in government contracts.
And we've got a great episode to mark the occasion. This month, we're covering the FAR Overhaul, GSA's proposed AI safeguarding rule, and significant proposed changes to the SBA's 8A program.
Jeremy, we finally got what contractors have been waiting for. The FAR Council published the first package of proposed rules under the Revolutionary FAR Overhaul. The administration's goal is to make the FAR shorter, easier to use, and more focused on statutory requirements by moving detailed guidance out of the regulation itself and into online acquisition resources.
And they're not being modest with the reference to revolutionary overhaul. This is the most significant restructuring of the FAR in over 4 decades.
Right. So this marks phase 2 of the overhaul. Phase 1 consisted largely of agency class deviations, implementing portions of the administration's procurement reform initiative. So now we're entering phase 2. This is the formal notice and comment rulemaking process, which means we're actually seeing what the permanent FAR could actually look like.
Can you walk us through the first package?
Yeah, and so the proposals touch nearly every stage of the acquisition process, from acquisition planning and market research to competition requirements, contract clauses, information technology, and bid protests.
What are the headline changes that contractors should know about?
There are a few key highlights here. So first, the acquisition planning is getting significantly simplified. Lengthy written acquisition plans we're all familiar with. Those will be replaced with a more flexible approach, concise documentation, in some cases, oral planning.
So that's a big shift in how agencies approach pre-award work.
It absolutely is. And second, and so there's a new FAR Part 40 that consolidates all of cybersecurity, information security, and supply chain security requirements that are currently scattered throughout the current FAR. So instead of hunting through multiple parts, you'll have just one place to look, hopefully.
That sounds helpful. What else?
It is. And so market research requirements are being folded into the acquisition planning process to reduce duplication. So there's new periodic review mechanism, basically a sunset process designed to identify outdated regulations and prevent the FAR from continuing to expand indefinitely.
Yeah, one interesting idea is that the FAR Council is even considering renumbering the solicitation provisions and contract clauses.
Right. And the goal is to make it immediately obvious to the reader whether you're looking at a legacy clause or one issued as part of the FAR overhaul. So it's a small change administratively, but it could make navigating the FAR much easier.
I mean, that makes sense if you're going to be operating under multiple versions of the FAR at the same time, which contractors inevitably will be.
Sure, and that's a practical challenge here. So depending on when a contract was awarded, you could be operating under the original FAR, class deviation text, or the new overhauled FAR. So tracking which version governs which contract is certainly going to be critical.
So what's not in the package?
So most notably, FAR Part 19, which pertains to small business programs, that's not included. That's coming in a later rulemaking.
Is there anything that contractors should be doing right now as the process plays out?
Yeah, first, monitor the additional proposed rules because we're only seeing the first wave. Second, pay close attention to the version of the FAR incorporated into the new solicitations. And so during this transition, contractors may find themselves working under different versions of the FAR, depending on when the procurement was issued.
Yeah, the administration wants final rules by the end of the year. So this whole thing is moving fast.
Very much. So even though these are proposed rules, they're a roadmap for where federal procurement is certainly headed. Contractors that understand these changes will certainly be much better positioned when the final rules are issued. All right, so let's shift gears to artificial intelligence. GSA published a proposed rule on June 17th that would establish new contractual safeguards for contractors that develop, operate, or use large language model AI systems in performing GSA contracts.
Yeah, this one contractor should pay close attention to. GSA is proposing a new GSAR clause that would apply across GSA's government-wide contract. Federal supply schedules, GWACs, Oasis Plus. If you're providing LLM services through any of those vehicles, this affects you. As agencies adopt generative AI, GSA is trying to establish baseline contractual safeguards for how government data is handled when LLMs are involved.
So let's get an overview of what this clause actually requires.
Yeah, so the clause applies when LLMs are processing government data. There are some exceptions for LLMs embedded in common commercial products or where the LLM functionality is incidental to the primary service. But if AI is a meaningful part of what you're delivering, this is likely covered.
Jeremy, what are the key obligations here?
The first is data ownership. The government retains full ownership of all data inputs and outputs. Contractors are prohibited from using government data to train or improve their LLMs. They can't use it for marketing or business operations or share it with unauthorized parties.
And that's certainly going to require some careful data segregation, right?
It will. Another important provision addresses supply chain security. The proposal would prohibit core LLM components from being developed or operated by entities subject to the control or influence of adversary foreign governments, while recognizing that some foreign developed open source software may still be allowed if it doesn't present an unacceptable security risk.
So what does it tell us about supply chain?
The rule defines specific roles. You have LLM developers, system operators, system integrators, service providers, and that mandates a flow down of specific requirements to subcontractors in those roles. So primes need to understand their supply chain and they're making sure their subs are compliant.
So is there anything in here for contractors in terms of protections?
There is. The proposed rule includes new protections for contractor background data. That's pre-existing proprietary content, reference materials, and knowledge bases that may be incorporated into LLM processing. So there's a recognition that contractors have intellectual property interests too.
So this proposed rulemaking, do you think this is just a GSA issue, or do you think this could be where the rest of the federal government is headed?
That's the bigger takeaway here. Today, it's limited to the GSA procurements, but GSA often leads acquisition policy. I wouldn't be surprised to see other agencies adopt similar requirements as they begin incorporating generative AI into their own acquisitions.
These proposed rules, well, what should contractors be doing to prepare for it?
Contractors should start by identifying whether they're using generative AI in contract performance, what government data those systems can access, and who their AI vendors and subcontractors are. Even if this rule changes before it's finalized, those are questions agencies are increasingly going to ask.
So it sounds like this is less about regulating AI itself, more about regulating how contractors use AI when performing government contracts. Is that fair?
That's right. GSA isn't trying to decide whether AI is good or bad. It's establishing contractual guardrails. Who owns the data, how it's protected, who can access it, and what contractors can and can't do with it. Those are really procurement questions, and I think we'll see more of them going forward.
All right. So our final topic is a significant proposed change. The SBA's 8A Business Development Program. On June 11th, the SBA published a proposed rule that would fundamentally change how individually owned businesses establish social disadvantage for purposes of entering the program.
This has been a long time coming, right?
It definitely has. So in 2023, the Ultima Services court decision, held that SBA's rebuttable presumption of social disadvantage, under which members of certain designated racial and ethnic groups were presumed socially disadvantaged, violated the Equal Protection Clause of the Constitution. So the SBA stopped applying the presumption shortly thereafter, and this proposed rule formally removes it from the regulations.
So what's the new standard?
So under the proposed rule, every individually owned applicant, regardless of race or ethnicity, would need to demonstrate social disadvantage through individualized, objective evidence. So applicants would need to document how discrimination or bias affected them, supported by verifiable evidence, such as government records, company policies, even court decisions, or other objective documentation.
Documentation such as...
So the proposed rule gives some examples, such as government records, previously mentioned, corporate policies, court decisions, administrative findings. So it's really a fact-based, verifiable standard. So no more presumptions as previously existed.
Does this affect entity-owned firms?
The proposal expressly does not change the eligibility requirements for businesses owned by Indian tribes, Alaska Native corporations, Native Hawaii organizations, or community developed corporations. Those remain unchanged.
What about those that are already in the program?
So current 8A participants don't need to reestablish eligibility. Applicants with pending applications should pay close attention to the rulemaking process because the standard that ultimately applies may depend, it's not clear now, but may depend on when the rule becomes final.
So if you're thinking about applying, what should you be doing?
So start evaluating now whether you have sufficient documentation to support a claim of social disadvantage under the new evidentiary standard. And don't wait for the final rule to figure it out, if you can meet the burden.
So this is more about changing how applicants prove eligibility.
Right. So the proposal replaces categorical presumption with an individualized evidentiary standard. So going forward, the focus won't be on whether an applicant falls within a particular group. It will be on whether they can objectively demonstrate social disadvantage under the new regulatory framework.
And that's our rundown for June 2026.
So 3 big developments here that we went over: the FAR overhaul, moving into formal rulemaking, GSA's new AI clause for LLM contractors, and a new evidentiary standard for the 8A program. All of these are going to have real impacts on how contractors do business with the federal government.
As always, if you have any questions about how any of these changes affect your contracts, please feel free to reach out to us.
So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.